Good evening. I'm Rick Wilson, and welcome to The Breakdown. Hey, folks, I'm Rick Wilson. My co-host and good friend Tara Setmeyer is off today getting ready for Thanksgiving, as all right-thinking Americans do. And so I am here basically unsupervised tonight. What could possibly go wrong? Folks, we're going to start out this week with our weekly segment, Last Week in the Republican Party. Then we'll jump into our special guest tonight, my friend and LP senior advisor and colleague, Stuart Stevens.
Madam Speaker, America is being crushed under the oppressive weight of the Democrats' greed for lust and power.
Madam Speaker, the halls of this hallowed republic have become darkened with the smut and filth of corrupted justice.
Picture America at a swim meet after World War II.
Kyle Rittenhouse would probably make a pretty good congressional intern.
Gas prices, Thanksgiving, a border.
COVID vaxes are not preventing infection, okay? It's just not.
If anybody tells you the 2020 election was not stolen, they are lying to you.
Right. Another alternative would be do a new election without machines. I mean, the Supreme Court will have a lot of decisions to make.
I was in the 6th grade. I turn on the TV. I watch Jimmy Carter have a sweater on and tell me to turn the heater down.
Joe Biden is the only president out of, the last 3 presidents who's been dumb enough to really follow through with this sort of populist outrage of bring the boys home, no more endless wars.
One of my top selling sandwiches still sells in some of the delis back home. They literally call it the McCarthy sandwich.
We're tired of playing defense. We're going to go on the offense on this and stand by.
I don't know whether to call you professor or comrade.
Did you get to take a bathroom break? And I didn't.
Nancy Pelosi's like the Pontius Pilate.
He may be censured over posting an animated video of himself killing Democratic Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez of New York and attacking President Biden with swords in the video.
Grew up in a country. Judge.
How is your voice doing after 8.5 hours speaking?
My voice is still strong because it's still strong for the American people.
I watched Jimmy Carter have a sweater on and tell me to turn the heater down.
Folks, every week we produce Last Week in the Republican Party as a sort of catalog and a milestone of where things are and how far they've gone off the rails. This one's like all that's left last week is like a hole in the fence and a car down in the ravine somewhere, because that was some true peak Republican crazy for the times we're living in. But with that, we're going to have a short show tonight, folks. We just want to have a brief conversation between Stuart and I. And before we start, I just want to express, this is the season of Thanksgiving, and it's a season of gratitude. And we should all take a moment, take a pause, take a breather out of politics, and just be grateful for our family and our friends and our teammates and our colleagues across the board. This is a country that's been stressed and strained for the last few years, almost to the breaking point in a bunch of different times. And it's important to remember the good. It's important to remember the people that have helped you and supported you. It's important to remember the people in your life that matter. And so take a break from Twitter this week. Take a break from social media this week. Spend some time remembering how blessed we are, how much Providence has favored us in the history of this country, and how much we have to give thanks for in a year that follows on a number of very painful years in the past. Now, with that, and to lighten things up a little bit, I'm going to bring on Stuart Stevens, who's the man I want to be when I grow up, and one of the most genius and creative minds in American politics in our history. And Stuart, you are presently in an undisclosed location where there is much snow. I'm given to understand.
It's a green screen.
Stuart's in Brooklyn.
But here in the bunker, it looks real. I know.
After a while, the MREs all taste the same, but the view changes, so you're in good shape. Well, Stuart, thank you for coming on and making some time tonight. And I just wanted to like I said, folks, we're going to have a short show tonight. We're not going to drag a long show out tonight. But Stuart, I was hoping to talk to you a little bit about I mean, sticking with politics just for a little while longer before the holiday kicks in. One thing I'm really grateful for this year is that we have a president who actually acts like a president and is doing the job. And I think that's one thing that I think we share in common is the sort of sense of relief that Joe Biden's an actual president.
Yeah, it's extraordinarily reassuring to have someone who actually cares about the job of president and who is in it because he wants to be president, not because he's trying to work through these personal issues that date back to being 5 years old. And he's surrounded by people who actually care about government, unlike this weirdo group of freaks and cast-offs and broken people that surrounded Donald Trump. The thing is, though, Rick, I think that there's sort of two sides to this. There's a great lust we all have for normalcy. And we have a normal president, and it can look like a normal time. And that's reassuring on the one hand, but on the other hand, it can be a little seductive in allowing us to not focus on the fact that this isn't at all a normal time.
Right.
That we have a major part of the United States of America that, for the most part, thinks that the president of the United States is illegal, which means that we live in an occupied country. And, all those years that we worked in the party, I just never could have imagined this happened. And it's a moment, we talk about it. I don't really see any comparison except 1860. That didn't work out so well. So I think it's important for us to be sort of a little bit contradictory about this, to embrace the normalcy and enjoy it and be thankful for it, but also not be sort of sucked into this false security that everything's going to be okay.
Yeah, I think that's really important. Excuse me. I think that's really important to remember because, this is, somebody made an analogy to me this morning. This is like the interwar years and, between World War I and World War II. This moment where things could be normal or they could be, and that you could be convinced that nothing bad could happen again, that the dark time is over. And then, in 1939, the world changed radically again. And so that idea that, Joe Biden's a normal guy, I'm grateful for it, as I think we all are. And I'm grateful he's putting some wins on the board. I mean, I think the infrastructure bill was a political win for Joe Biden. I think it was a meaningful accomplishment. He had to fight off resistance both left and right. And of course, somebody had to listen to Kevin McCarthy blowing his own horn for 8 hours. But I think he is putting some wins on the board. But we are still at a moment where, as you said, 70+ million Americans believe he's an illegitimate president, and have now come to believe the big lie. And the ones in office who don't believe it are willing to lie about saying they believe it, that he wasn't elected legally. And I think that's something we've got to keep our eye on. And I think there are people out there who would love to imagine we're going to go back to the old Republican Party and we're going to run a standard issue Republican candidate and everything will be back to normal. I don't think those days are ever coming back.
No, I listened to my old client and friend Chris Christie talk about how the party can move on from Trump. I don't think you can move on from the past until you acknowledge the past and acknowledge the impact on it. It just never works.
Right.
And what has happened in this country isn't something that ended with the inauguration of Joe Biden. It's ongoing. And, it's a hard thing, at least for me to grasp, but this party that I spent so much time working in has really become an autocratic movement.
It has.
And I feel like I should have seen this before. I wish I had. I wish I'd called it out earlier, but I can't undo that.
Right.
But these are, there are a lot of buffoonish people out in front of here. I mean, all the people we laugh at and make fun of, we just saw a lot of them in that video. But underneath that, as you know better than most people, they're very serious people who really do believe that the country cannot go forward under a democratic system because of the way that the country is changing. And when you have 1 out of 10 of the new Americans in the new survey is white, when the majority of Americans who are 15 years and under are non-white.
Mm-hmm.
This terrifies our old party, and it pushes them to try to change the rules of democracy and take us down a slope so that this is how democracy as we know it ends.
Mm-hmm. You know, and I think one thing that I am, very grateful for this year is that there has been a rising tide of folks running for office on the Democratic side, finally, who, are military veterans who are willing to embrace service and the flag and patriotism in a way that in a lot of ways, you and I had it easy for a long time. We were always able to claim the mantle of national security and strength and protection, for the GOP, for all of our candidates over the years. And I think now there's a rising group of Democrats and folks who oppose, Trumpism and authoritarianism, actually posting up and running for office. I think it's kind of an impressive and an underappreciated moment in our politics.
Yeah, it blows my mind when I see Kevin McCarthy up there attacking the military, saying that they're more interested in being woke than winning wars. It's all those years and all those campaigns we ran accusing Democrats of not supporting the military. Now the Republicans are the military doubting pro-Putin party.
Yeah.
But I'm with you. I think that there is a new generation of Democratic potential leaders out there, people like Connor Lamb, who I think can really take us beyond this moment. And I think that's really the business we're in now. I'm a short-term pessimist about the country and a long-term optimist.
I love that.
I think that it's our job to get through this next period. Maybe that period is 5 years. It's probably more like 10 years. And to be able to hand off the democracy that we inherited. And I think then we'll be fine. But the other side realizes this, and that's why they want to change the rules. And look, Donald Trump or a DeSantis gets elected in 24. I don't think it's alarmist. It may sound alarmist, but I think it's realistic to say that probably could be very much the last election that we recognize as anything that we've known in our lifetime.
Yeah, I like to analogize that to sort of the Ba'ath Party in Iraq.
Mm-hmm.
After Saddam took power in that coup, they had elections every 2 years, and Saddam would get 109% of the vote, and the Ba'ath Party slate of candidates that he'd approve would get 105% of the vote, and it looked like a democracy on paper, and they did things that looked like a democracy would do, but it wasn't a democracy by any stretch. So
years ago, I got a call from a guy. Very erudite, Oxford educated Egyptian who was working for Mubarak. And he asked if we wanted to work on the election. And I said to him, well, I didn't really know you have elections there. And he said, well, look, I'm not saying I don't like our chances, but we want this to look like a real election. So if you guys work for us, then we could say it was a real election. So we took a pass on that. But I think that defense of what it really means to have elections and how it can change. And, there's no secret into why so many on the right have embraced Hungary.
Sure.
It's extraordinary. And it's the perfect model of where they want to take America.
Tucker Carlson's favorite autocracy.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of Tucker Carlson, I noticed that Jonah Goldberg and Stephen Hayes have at long last decided that they can't stomach being at Fox as long as Tucker is the sort of authoritarian kingmaker over there.
Yeah, everybody at Fox should quit, and they shouldn't advertise. People shouldn't advertise on Fox until they get out of the anti-democracy and pro-racism business. I mean, you can't say, look, I work for a channel that is fair, and then, a lot of your salary is paid by the money that people like Tucker Carlson are bringing in.
Sure.
You just can't do it. It's not a defense to say, well, not every one of our programs is anti-democracy and racist, just the most popular.
That was my grandmother, who was born in 1917 in Marianna, Florida, had one of her usual Southernisms. It was like, son, once there's a turd in the punch bowl, it's not punch anymore.
Yep.
And Tucker Carlson is the turd in the racist nationalist punch bowl at Fox. There are a few others as well, but I think you're right. I mean, it's interesting to me though that those are two guys who are not quite the MAGA establishment media types, but they've certainly tried to walk that narrow line in the middle and sort of being discomforted with Trump, but anti-Trump at the same time. And it's an interesting crack at Fox's sort of control over the right-wing ecosystem.
Yeah, look, I don't think you can. I think a lot of people are coming to realize this. I mean, we have a lot of friends who thought that we could save the Republican Party, and criticized the Lincoln Project because we seem to have given up on the Republican Party. And I think post January 6th and what's happened since then, a lot of those people have gradually come around to the conclusion that we had looking at this, that a party that Donald Trump controls, and Donald Trump does control the Republican Party, is not a party that is worth saving.
Right. And as a point that I was making yesterday on a Twitter thread I did, people who are like, well, what's the Lincoln Project's mission now that Trump's out of office? Well, there are two possible outcomes in 2022 and 24. Either Donald Trump and people who support him and are like him are in this process, and there are people who oppose them with the skill that we can and the ferocity we can, or we just roll over and walk away. I'm not going to accept, and I don't think anybody who's at the Lincoln Project should ever accept, or in a pro-democracy space, the idea that it's okay to have Ron DeSantis adopt all the nationalism and populism and authoritarian statist techniques of Donald Trump, but say, oh, I have a degree from Harvard and a degree from Yale, I'm okay. Or to have a Josh Hawley or a Tom Cotton or a Ted Cruz or a Marco Rubio or anybody else in that stack of candidates who want to be president try to run Trump through the car wash and come out and say, oh, well, we believe all the same things that he changed our party into, but we're not as obviously crazy as he is. I'm kind of grateful that we've kept that fighting spirit inside LP. It's important.
Yeah, I mean, I think this idea that's kind of been floating around that somehow we're promoting Trump.
It's insane.
I mean, we have a National Cancer Institute. It doesn't mean we're promoting cancer.
Right.
It means that we recognize it's a danger, and
exactly.
that you have to focus
and you got to
fight it.
And the analogy I made was like, it's like saying, oh, well, hey, doc, I know you said this cancer was bad, but I don't want to talk about it, so it'll go away. It won't go away. Trump's not going to go away. I mean, short of some externality like, the getting struck by a meteorite or eaten by wolves or a massive heart attack, the guy's not going to go away. He loves this thing because it strokes his ego. But with that, I want to just jump to one last thing here on the good news front. It was just brought to my attention. The country has felt this sense of uncertainty this year, and a lot of that was COVID. A lot of that was the violence of 1/6 and the ongoing effect of that. A lot of that is that the Republicans, have tried to turn a president who's trying to run uphill with a 50-pound pack on, and saying, why aren't you sprinting fast enough? I think all of it is starting to come up short. COVID is still out there, but the alternative was we weren't going to do a vaccination program at the scale, scope, and intensity we did. The stock market is actually outdone Trump at this point, which I think is kind of remarkable and an unsung story. And for 4 years, the Republicans were like, the stock market's great, therefore Trump is great. And now with Biden, I'm sure they're going to say, well, the stock market's not really the fundamental indicator. And finally, we're also looking at the job numbers where the Bureau of Labor Statistics had to go back and reassess because it turned out the last 3 months were vastly better than they thought. So I think there's some green shoots and some good news out there that we should be grateful for.
Yeah, and I think you have a governing party that's focused on these big issues. I mean, I was struck by my home state governor, Tate Reeves in Mississippi, right? Mm-hmm. So the governor's mansion in Mississippi is in downtown Jackson. As we speak in downtown Jackson, you cannot drink the water because the water system doesn't work. You have to boil water. And Tate Reeves is talking about critical race theory when he can't even drink water in his own governor's mansion. And it just, to me, is a perfect symbol of the sort of failure of an entire party. I mean, the ultimate purpose of politics is to help people and to solve big problems.
Sure.
And Republicans have just lost all that. They exist to beat Democrats, which is really what cartels are, not what political parties are.
Well, the idea that you can always project what a crime family would do by just following up what the Trumps and the Republican Party are doing today is increasingly relevant. Hey, well, Stuart, listen, I want to keep this short today. I want to keep this short tonight for everybody who's watching. We're very grateful for all of the support from across the country, from hundreds of thousands of Americans who've joined the Lincoln Project, who support us financially, who follow our content, who've been in the fight with us, who are out registering voters, doing the hard work of preserving democracy. We are deeply and profoundly grateful for all of your help, your encouragement, your support, your friendship. And we want you to know that we're taking Thanksgiving off to be with our families and our friends. We encourage all of you to do the same. Take a deep breath. Enjoy the fact that we are still on our feet, still fighting to keep this country for what it can and should be. And we'll be back in the fight next Monday. And we hope you'll join us again for another edition of The Breakdown on